Have you ever felt deeply alone even when surrounded by people you've known for years? Have you been in a crowded room, hearing laughter, conversations, jokes? But inside you, everything felt silent, disconnected, empty. Maybe you look at your friends and realize there's nothing there that fills you anymore. The conversations seem recycled, the jokes forced, their presence absent of meaning. Perhaps even your family looks at you with that familiar gaze, but they no longer see who you have become. And that's when a brutal question starts to haunt you. Am I becoming someone antisocial? Am I losing my ability to connect? Is the problem me? No. The problem is not you. What you are feeling has a name, a cause, and a purpose, as painful as it may seem. Carl Jung called this the loneliness of individuation, and perhaps this is one of the most devastating and at the same time liberating truths you will find in deep psychology. Because when you start to evolve psychologically, when you begin the process of becoming who you really are, and no longer who others expected you to be, you inevitably distance yourself, not because you want to, not out of arrogance, but because you can no longer stay where your soul has already departed. You start to realize that a good part of the people you love still live an unexamined life. As Jung said, they follow social scripts, repeat inherited beliefs, define themselves by roles, mother, father, professional, friend. But you have started to question, to look within, to ask yourself, who am I beyond all of this? And from that moment on, the disconnection begins. Not because you have distanced yourself, but because by getting closer to yourself, you have become invisible to those who only knew your old version. It is at this point that many people give up on their own growth, because it hurts. It hurts to see friendships dissolving. It hurts to see family members saying that you have changed, that you have become strange, cold, stuck up. It hurts to feel that no one understands your inner language anymore. But Jung did not romanticize this process. He knew that becoming a complete individual comes at a cost, and the highest price is not financial. It is emotional. It is existential. You do not lose connections. You discover that many of them were never real. They were sustained by false versions of you. When those versions die, the bonds die with them. This video is a mirror, not to judge you, but to show you that you are not crazy, not broken, not alone. At least, not in the way you think. What you feel is a stage, a process, a deep psychological rite. You are crossing the desert of individuation. And although it seems like you are losing everything, you're actually finally finding yourself. Get ready. What Jung reveals to us is not easy to hear, but it is exactly what you need to understand to navigate this phase with clarity, strength, and purpose. And perhaps by the end of this video, you will see that this devastating loneliness may be the beginning of the freedom you have always sought. Carl Jung did not see psychological development as a light, gradual, and socially accepted process. He knew that the true evolution of consciousness is violent, silently violent, not because it involves direct external conflict, but because it dismantles from within all the structures that kept you integrated into the herd. And when these structures crumble, you discover something that no one warned you about. The price of becoming yourself is losing automatic belonging. According to Jung, most people live in a state he called identification with the persona. They confuse themselves with the social role they play. They are the lawyer, the older brother, the nurturing mother, the joker of the group, the shoulder to cry on, the successful one. But these masks, which work well in the collective theater of everyday life, are not the essence. They are merely adaptive armors, and the problem arises when you begin to realize this. When the journey of individuation begins, you initiate a brutal separation. A separation between what is true in you and what has been imposed, conditioned, learned to be accepted. You start to see that many of your opinions are not yours, that your values were inherited, that your choices were shaped by fear of rejection, not by authentic desire. And this realization detaches you from the group, because you no longer speak the same language. You no longer share the same emotional logic. Jung said that this process creates an inevitable chasm between those who are awakening to themselves and those who remain asleep within their roles. This does not make you better. It makes you someone at a different stage. And here is the truth that no one wants to face. It is impossible to stay connected with everyone while you free yourself from the invisible shackles of conformity. The closer you get to your center, the further you distance yourself from the center of the masses. This distance is not just geographical, it is existential. It is the kind of distance you feel even while sitting at the table with loved ones. But you can no longer pretend. You hear them, but you do not connect. You smile, but inside you feel a deep fatigue, not physical, but of the soul. Because to be there, you would have to amputate parts of yourself that no longer accept being silenced. And perhaps the cruelest part of all this is the following. You begin to realize that you can no longer go back. You can visit the old world, but you can no longer inhabit it. Because once you see, you can no longer unsee. Once you feel, you can no longer anesthetize. Your awakening has created a definitive rupture with the surface. And it is at this moment that the process becomes even more difficult. Because the people around you will notice, and they will not passively accept this change. Deep down, they know that your transformation threatens their emotional balance, and the reaction will come. Prepare yourself, because in the next part, we will explore exactly what happens when you stop pretending, and others begin to try to pull you back to the old version of yourself. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Jung observed that the process of distancing does not happen suddenly. It comes in waves, each one deeper, more honest, and more irreversible than the last. It is not you who decides if they will come. It is your growth that invokes them, and once they start, nothing can stop them. The first wave is silent, but devastating. You simply stop pretending. Things you used to tolerate now deeply disturb you. You begin to lose the ability to play the roles that sustained your old relationships. The forced joke no longer brings you a smile. The superficial chatter in the group of friends no longer entertains you. It exhausts you. The parties where you used to get intoxicated now seem like empty rituals. It's not that you have become difficult. It's that your authenticity has matured to such an extent that any form of self-betrayal has become unbearable. You begin to live in dissonance. Around you, everything seems to continue as before, but inside you, something has changed radically. And this change is noticeable. Even if you say nothing, others feel it. This is where the second wave arises. The reaction of the people around you, the resistance, the attempt to pull you back. You're different. Do you think you're better than others now? Where's that lightness of yours from before? Phrases that are not genuine concerns, but unconscious defenses of those who feel threatened by your awakening. You need to understand this. Your growth confronts the stagnation of others. When you transform, you hold up a mirror. And this mirror reflects what many are not ready to see in themselves. They feel they have lost something. And they have. They have lost control over the version of you that was comfortable for them. And this awakens discomfort, jealousy, criticism, or even rejection in them. Then comes the third wave, the hardest, the most honest. You discover that many relationships only existed because you played a specific role. Perhaps you were the always available advisor, the funny person who lightened the mood, the friend who always said yes, the obedient child who never questioned anything. When you stop being those things, not out of rebellion, but out of integrity, those relationships begin to evaporate. And you realize with pain that they were not based on who you really are, but on who you performed to be. It is in this third wave that loneliness truly settles in. Not a physical loneliness, but a loneliness of essence. You feel that you no longer belong to a world that no longer resonates with your new frequency. It is painful, it is cruel, but it is also necessary, because it is only by losing what was false that you begin to make space for what is real. But what now? What do you do with this emptiness? How do you survive the fact that you can no longer be who you were, but still do not know who you will be? How do you traverse this space between the death of the persona and the birth of the self? In the next part, we will talk exactly about that. How to endure and transform the loneliness of individuation into fertile ground for the rebirth of your authentic identity. Few pains are as confusing as losing people without a fight, without shouting, without dramatic breakups, just the silent distancing, the gradual cooling, the inevitable disconnection. You try to understand, you try to rationalize, but there is no logical explanation that can erase the emptiness that settles in when bonds dissolve, not due to conflicts, but due to growth. It is an invisible mourning, a mourning that no one validates, because you cannot justify it with common arguments. We broke up, we fought, there was betrayal. No, you just no longer fit, you no longer match, you no longer function on that frequency, and that is hard to accept, because for a long time you believed it was possible to evolve without losing, to grow without breaking, to expand without distancing. But Jung was clear about this. The process of individuation comes at a price, and the price is the illusion of permanence. You cannot continue being the same person if you are truly transforming, and consequently, you cannot maintain all the connections that belong to the previous version of yourself. The cruelest part is that no one prepares you for this kind of loss. People talk about distancing from toxic relationships, about cutting ties with those who harm you. But no one talks about what to do when you need to distance yourself from people who once meant everything to you, not because they hurt you, but because you grew. This kind of distancing is more painful than that caused by betrayal, because it comes with guilt. You wonder, was I selfish? Could I have done more to keep this relationship alive? But the truth is that the only way to maintain those ties would be to betray yourself, to reverse your process, to pretend you haven't changed. And that, now, is simply impossible. Jung called this necessary psychological death, a stage in which you let parts of yourself die, and with them, the relationships that clung to those parts. It's like pruning a sick branch from a tree. It hurts, but it is the only way for something new to grow. You are going through a season of loss, not due to failure, but due to integrity. You are not isolating yourself, you are detoxifying. But what to do with this pain? How not to get lost in it? How to find meaning while the old world disappears and the new has not yet arrived? Jung's answer is brutal, but profoundly true. You need to learn to tolerate the emptiness. In the next part, we will dive into this emptiness. We will understand what Jung called the interregnum of individuation, the transitional period where you do not yet belong anywhere, and how to navigate it with clarity, courage, and purpose. The greatest trap of loneliness is believing that it is a sign of failure, of inadequacy, of something wrong with you. When in fact, for Jung, the deep loneliness that emerges during individuation is a clear symptom that something right is finally happening. It is not the pathology, it is the process, it is the price, and more than that, it is the portal. Yet no one teaches you to see loneliness this way. Since childhood, we have been programmed to associate connection with personal value. The idea of being alone is painted as a defect, punishment, or social failure. The lonely human is the one who was left behind, the one no one wanted, the one who could not integrate. But Jung proposes a completely different and radically liberating view. If you are truly growing, you will feel lonely. And if you are not feeling this way at some point in the journey, you may still just be trading one group of conformity for another. This loneliness that envelops you now, this silence, this distance, this feeling that no one really sees you, is not rejection. It is transition. You are stepping out of the unconscious crowd to become an authentic being. You are leaving behind the social crutches that once supported your identity. And in that interval, between leaving the old and not yet having built the new, there exists a desert. Jung called this the psychological interregnum, the time between what has died and what has not yet been born. It is in this desert that most get lost, because it is long, cold, dark, and there are no guarantees. You do not know when or if you will find new connections that resonate with who you have become. You have no map, no applause, no company. It is you and you. And here is the most crucial point. It is in this space that you learn to be whole. If you endure this emptiness without fleeing, without numbing, without retreating, you are reborn. Because true emotional autonomy is born in this kind of solitude. It is when you stop begging for belonging and start building a life that reflects your truth, even if that means starting from scratch. Jung saw this moment as sacred, a kind of psychic purgatory necessary for the construction of the self. It is not comfortable, but it is real. And more importantly, it is temporary, as long as you have the courage to cross it without betraying your transformation. But what comes after? After you have learned to tolerate absence, what comes next? The answer may surprise you. New connections, different, rarer, yet infinitely deeper. In the next section, we will explore what Jung called fellow travelers, people who are also on this path and who, when you meet them, not only understand your journey, but walk alongside you. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. After crossing the desert of individuation, you realize something that changes everything. You don't need crowds, you need resonance. It doesn't matter how many people are around you. What matters is how many truly see the soul you have become. The loneliness that seemed like a punishment now reveals itself as a filter. It expels everything that was false, everything that was noise, everything that was a disguise. And what remains is space. Space for the new, for the real. Jung believed that the process of individuation, although solitary, did not have to be isolated forever. He said that when you walk with enough integrity, you inevitably begin to attract people who are also doing the inner work. These people are rare. They do not stand out for their noise, but for their depth. Not for appearances, but for the silent authenticity they carry in their gaze, in their posture, in their energy. They are the fellow travelers, travelers on the same road. Beings who have also lost everything that was false, who have also faced the waves of disconnection, who have also been accused of changing too much, and yet continued. People who are not interested in your performance, but in your truth, who do not want you back in the old role, but who genuinely wish to know who you are now. The most surprising thing is that these connections do not arise from effort. They emerge when you stop trying to fit in, when you start living according to your own frequency, even if that means walking alone for a while. It is in this state of internal alignment that you begin to function as a beacon. You do not shout, but emit a specific light, and those who are tuned in will see. But here is the warning. If you are still trying to force depth where there clearly is none, if you are still begging for emotional crumbs from shallow relationships, you will not have space nor energy to welcome the new. It takes courage to break with the known and be vulnerable in the face of the invisible. And even more, it takes discernment not to fall into the trap of replacing the old persona with another, more spiritualized, more authentic, but still a mask. Real travelers recognize each other not by appearance, nor by speeches, but by presence, a gaze that holds silence, a listening that does not judge, a conversation that starts deep and stays there, and above all, by an absence of the need to mold you. They do not want an idealized version of you. They want exactly you, with light, shadow, boundaries, and intensity. Finding these people is rare. But when it happens, life changes, because a single true connection can heal the trauma of hundreds of superficial interactions. Jung knew this, and he warned us. It is not about quantity, but about depth, about psychic alignment, about silent communion between souls that chose individuation, even knowing that it would make them strange to the common world. But how to sustain these connections? How to preserve your authenticity without losing yourself in roles? How to keep the integrity of the self alive even within a relationship? In the next part, we will explore what Jung taught about brutal honesty as a tool for true connection, and how to communicate your change to the world firmly, clearly, and without guilt. You need to hear this now. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. That pain you feel is not a sign of failure. It is not pathology. It is not a defect. It is the birth of your true self. And every birth, no matter how symbolic, requires blood, requires contraction, requires loss. What you are facing is not a collapse. It is a reconstruction. The loneliness that consumes your days, the discomfort that erodes your old certainties, the feeling of being out of place everywhere, all of this is the living evidence that you have come out of collective anesthesia. You have stopped pretending, and now you stand before your inner mirror without filters. For the first time, you are not trying to please, belong, or fit in. You are trying to be. Carl Jung never said this process would be beautiful, let alone easy. He knew that individuation demands what we hold most dear: false bonds, social masks, the roles that gave us security, but kept us tied to psychic mediocrity. You are paying that price. And because of that, you are closer to yourself than you have ever been. The pain that visits you now is a kind of death, but a fertile death. You are burying past versions of yourself, yes, but you are planting the seeds of something infinitely more honest. And when the roots of this new self begin to deepen, you will realize something that now seems impossible. That loneliness was not the end, it was the passage. That emptiness was the womb of a new existence. And when, and only when, you learn to stand firm in your authenticity, even in the absence of applause, will true connections begin to emerge. Not many, but enough. Deep. Whole. You will no longer have to mutilate yourself to be accepted, nor hide to be loved. You will be seen, not despite your depth, but because of it. This is the truth Jung left us. You can keep trying to maintain all the bonds, all the masks, all the old versions, or you can choose yourself, but you cannot have both. And if you have the courage to continue, you will discover something rare, that being authentic may leave you alone for a time, but being false keeps you empty forever. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you in this process? Have you ever felt that loneliness that no one understands? Have you tried to explain your transformation to someone who just looked at you strangely? Share in the comments, because this is a conversation that needs to exist. And don't forget, the next video is an essential continuation of this journey. It's important. Watch it. And if this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Here, you don't have to diminish yourself to be understood. Here, you are welcome, just as you are.